I'm going to tell you the tough truth about James Harden. He's just a loser. He's just the biggest loser.
I'm relentless. Can you feel this? I'm going all in. It's time to cash in. One moment in time. Let's get at this. Be tremendous. Relentless. I'm relentless.
Here we go.
This is the Skip Bayless Show, episode 112. This, as always, is the Undisputed. Everything I cannot share with you during the 2.5-hour debate show that is Undisputed. Today, episode 112, I will roast the greatest roast of all time, featuring Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., the GOAT. I actually loved it, but I just don't love roasts. I'll get to that. Today, I will take you way behind the scenes of Byron Scott's undisputed criticism of LeBron James. And today, I will criticize James Harden in ways I don't think anybody else will criticize James Harden. And today, I will take you briefly back down my memory lanes to my hometown of Oklahoma City and my home away from home, Dallas, Texas, before they even had basketball. And finally today, I will tell you about the most frivolous purchase I've ever made in my life. But first up, as always, it is not to be skipped. Now look, I must admit, I never understood the concept of the roast. And I have participated in several roasts, so I've always been a roaster, never the roastee. So let me get this straight. You take somebody great, and you bring in a bunch of that great person's friends, and also a bunch of comedians who probably don't even know that great person. And you have all the friends and all the comedians rip this great person to shreds. No rules, no unwritten rules, no out of bounds, no off limits, no nothing. The cheaper the shots, the better. Because that's funny? We kid because we love? Really? This is love? I just don't get it, but I've never gotten it. And then in the end, that great person is allowed to close the festivities by taking over the podium and trashing, absolutely trashing everyone who for the previous 2 or 3 hours trashed him or her. Really? Interesting. And then everybody goes home and sits back and thinks, really? That's what he or she really thinks of me? I don't know. I just don't get it. This is basically what happened in what I watched on Netflix Sunday night, live stream. Way to go, Netflix. The GOAT, or the greatest roast of all times, and yet the object of this roast, the GOAT, the object of shockingly profane, often tasteless and classless ridicule was the NFL GOAT, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., who, by the way, by night's end, made sure that everybody understood why he is the greatest of all time. Tom Brady on Sunday night was absolutely brilliant. He showed you why he is the greatest. He was brilliant. It was brilliant. And my biggest takeaway from the night was that Tom Brady will soon become, for this network, for Fox Sports, one of the greatest NFL analysts of all time, if not the greatest. Because that's what he does. That's who he is. He shocks the world. He proves everybody wrong. He wins. He always, always wins. And did he ever win on Sunday night? The biggest winner, by far, of the greatest roast of all times was the brains and the guts behind it was Tom Brady, who knew exactly what he was doing from start to all-time great finish. You know, I always said Brady was very underrated when it came to how many hits he could take, this during a football game, and keep bouncing right back up and shaking off said hit and continuing to compete at the highest level. So Sunday night, Tom Brady took 100 times more hits during this 3-hour roast than he ever took during a 3-hour football game. I'm talking about shocking shots, gay jokes, hair jokes, plastic surgery jokes, Giselle jokes, jokes, relentless jokes, below the belt shot jokes. This was not former teammates Gronk and Julian Edelman and Randy Moss doing remember when jokes. Not once all night did a former teammate say, "I'll never forget the time." No, there was none of that. These were comedy club jokes written for these players by A-list comedy writers. A-list. Brady only does it the right way. A lot of these jokes were scathingly funny, I'll admit it. And yet, there were a number of them that made me flat out cringe and say, no, you can't do that. That's just wrong. Players kept saying, we're going to keep it locker room. But trust me on this, I've been in a whole lot of locker rooms in my time. No locker room joke crossed the lines that a lot of these jokes crossed. Because if you had, you'd have a fist fight on your hands. There was a Hamas joke. There was a 9/11 joke. There were all kinds of X-rated sex jokes. And see, here I go. If you're listening and or watching me right here, right now, and you haven't watched the greatest roast of all times just yet, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, damn, I got to check that out. I am giving Netflix the greatest possible advertising because, frankly, it's deserved. As offensive as many of the jokes were, this was a spectacular production. I mean, I look up and we even got Ron Burgundy from one of my all-time favorites, Anchorman. Obviously, it's Will Ferrell playing Ron Burgundy, roasting Tom Brady. It doesn't get any better than that. The GOAT does it only one way, the right way. So I guess for the sort of uninitiated, for the casual fans, the stunner of the night, here were Bill Belichick's robotic say-nothing Patriots letting their hair down, spilling their guts live on national television. But again, I ask, what exactly was the point? In the end, this was like some bizarre kind of shock therapy, especially for Brady's teammates, because these are the players closest to him, his closest teammates, and they're reaching deep down for their deepest, darkest issues with their quarterback. Their envy, their jealousy, their resentment of their quarterback for all the world to see. All fueled by their favorite beverages. And as you know, as I always say, alcohol is the ultimate truth serum. This was almost 3 hours of truth or dare. Truth, truth, truth. I dare you to tell the truth. Truth. And I did imagine everyone involved waking up the next morning thinking, did I really say that? Did he really say that about me? Is that what he really thinks of me? 3 hours of shock therapy. Roasts are a license to kill, and you can take that word kill in many different ways, as in killing or crushing. As a stand-up comic, oh, there's nothing better. This is stand-up comic heaven, license to kill the audience in a good way. But it's also a license to kill your brother or your sister with all too honest truth. Off-limits truth. Because it's all just a big joke, really? Is it a joke or not? I don't know. It's a very fine line. Everybody was walking. And through it all, Tom Brady just sat there, smiling the greatest smile ever. He just looked so beautifully regal sitting there, taking it. He just took it and took it and took it. I had so many friends tell me, man, Brady was such a good sport. Well, that was the point. That was the goal. That was the object. Tom Brady even had a React cam set up for his trainer, Alex Guerrero, who obviously took his unfair share of abuse. And as soon as he did, every Alex Guerrero every Alex Guerrero joke drew an immediate react shot from Alex Guerrero, who would be just laughing uproariously at said joke. Laughing and laughing and laughing. Ha ha, you got me again. That Alex is such a good sport. That was the point. Then finally, going on 3 hours, it was Tom's turn. And did he ever take over late, as he did in so many Super Bowl games? Did he ever go smiling assassin? I always say there were two smiling assassins that I've covered, been around, closely observed. There was Jordan, and there was Brady. Brady went Jordan on Sunday night late. He deflated everyone's egos like they were footballs, only I will go to my grave believing Brady never deflated a single football. So, forget deflated. He basically effectively decapitated everyone who had dared to make fun of him. Tom saved his best or worst for last, for Belichick. Yep, Bill was there, obviously because Tom asked him to be there. But this was nothing but Tom's arena, Tom's rules. Tom did leave Bill after Bill pushed him out the back door with help from Robert Kraft. Tom went to Tampa, as you well know, in a pandemic year. He took a 7-9 team immediately to a Super Bowl championship. He did that. While over the last 4 years in New England, Bill Belichick couldn't win a single playoff game. Over the offseason, Bill Belichick couldn't land a single NFL job. Advantage Tom, leverage Tom. Tom in charge. As Belichick certainly appeared to know all night long. Bill seemed vaguely uncomfortable to me, trying to force that smile that he rarely uses throughout it all. Hey, Belichick would have looked bad if he'd turned down Tom Brady's invitation to participate in the roasting of Tom Brady. But the truth was, to me, Bill looked even worse while having to sit there and take Tom's final salvo. Understand, only once all night, only one time in almost 3 hours, did Tom stand up and intercede to protect any target of ridicule. That was when comedian Jeff Ross made a joke about Robert Kraft and massages. And Tom immediately stepped toward the podium, toward the microphone, and said, and you can audibly hear it on the telecast, "Don't say that shit again." He stood up for Mr. Kraft, his former owner and close friend, and said, "No, not him, not tonight, not on my watch." Yet, when Tom spoke, he did not hesitate to get personal on Belichick. This is what Tom said about Bill. Tom said, "Everybody asked me which ring is my favorite. I used to say my next one. But now that I'm retired, my favorite ring is the camera that caught Coach Belichick slinking out of that poor girl's house a few months ago." Then Tom turned to Bill and said, "Hey, you still got it. Respect, baby." He said that while laughing and pointing and twisting the knife. Then came the mic drop from Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. And I quote, Tom said, "I've been out of the game for a minute, so I'm just curious, how many Super Bowl rings have you won since I left?" That obviously directed toward Belichick. And then Tom spoke only to the crowd. "Maybe it's not just the guy on the sideline. When I go to the Indy 500, I don't ask the winning driver, 'Hey, who gassed up your car?'" Whew. Nuclear shot. So you know me. You've known my stance for years on Brady versus Belichick. You know exactly how I feel. I've said for, I don't know, how many years have we done Undisputed? 8 years now? I've said for 8 years, 75% of the dynasty was Tom Brady. I'll give Bill 25%. Just because I'm a nice guy. And obviously, Tom Brady has agreed with that from the start. Tom did not intend his final salvo to be funny. He intended it to deliver the stone-cold truth. Camouflaged as humor, because that's how roasts work. I don't believe that Tom particularly loves Bill Belichick. Respects him, sure. Honors the years that they won together. Likes him, no. I'm sorry, the bridge got burned by Bill Belichick because for years he treated Tom like just another cog in his system when Tom knew from day one he was the system. And Tom's never going to get over that, as his father has said many times publicly. Remember that AFC Championship game, the Jacksonville game, Saxonville at Foxborough? Remember what had happened the Wednesday practice before? Somehow, this is the story they told, that Tom got his hand caught up into Rex Burkhead's jersey or something as he handed off to him. Tore open his palm of his throwing hand, just across the thumb, just tore it open. It required, according to Tom, 12 stitches, and I certainly believe him, 12 stitches. Alex Guerrero talked about how they tried to wrap it, and then as Tom stood in the tunnel, about to run onto the field for the AFC Championship game, he just ripped off the cover and said, I'm just going to play with the stitches exposed. And you remember what happened. He threw for 124 yards in the fourth quarter. They were down 20-10, and he brought them back to win again. And you remember what Bill said after the game when asked about Tom sucking it up and playing with the 12 stitches in the palm of his throwing hand? Fresh stitches from the wound suffered that week. Bill's response, well, it wasn't exactly open heart surgery. I mean, come on, Bill, give him a little, just a little. He got you to another Super Bowl and won it. Give him just a morsel of respect and appreciation and gratitude. Remember, the last 3 years, really, Bill was trying to get rid of Tom. Finally talked Robert Kraft into signing off on getting rid of Tom because Bill obviously wanted to prove to the world that he was the reason. He got his chance. And over the last 4 years, Bill got his team to one playoff game. It was at Buffalo. The final score was 47-17 Buffalo. And it was an immaculate game for the Bills and Josh Allen because Bill Belichick's defense never forced Buffalo to give up the football. They scored a field goal or a touchdown on every single possession. The greatest defensive mind ever, quote unquote, allowed the immaculate game to happen in a playoff game at Buffalo, and that was the only playoff game Belichick's Patriots got to in 4 years without Tom Brady. Bill Belichick is 12 games under 500 as a head coach in the National Football League without Tom Brady as his quarterback. Think about that. He's way below average. He got exposed. Bill Belichick disrespected the wrong cog. And Sunday night, Tom brilliantly maneuvered Bill into a happy, ha-ha, greatest roast of all times. He maneuvered him right into that situation or trap. And then Tom Brady performed open heart surgery live on Netflix for all the world to see. And I loved it. This is Liam from Houston who asks, who would you want on stage during the Skip Bayless roast? Well, Liam, as you just heard, not a big roast fan to start with. Honestly, I hope I never have to sit through my own roast. Who knows, maybe. For charity, maybe. I guess I would submit to it. But if I did, I would want, number one, my wife at my side, Ernestine. She would have a lot to say, but I don't know that she would go that public with it, but I could be surprised. Number 2, I'd want my brother Lil Wayne there. And then in no particular order, I'd want Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp and Keyshawn Johnson, Michael Irvin and Richard Sherman. My current and former bosses, Eric Shanks, Charlie Dixon, Jamie Horowitz, Norby Williamson. And for sure, my best friend from childhood from Oklahoma City, the radio legend that is Craig Humphreys. But my fear would be that most, if not all, of these relationships would end by the end of that night. That's roasting for you. This is Theo from Santa Monica. Who do you want getting the Lakers head coaching job? So, Theo, let me start with this. We had Byron Scott on Undisputed on Wednesday. I hope you caught it. Maybe you could find it on YouTube if you did not. So as I sat there listening to Byron, reading between his lines, it occurred to me that Byron Scott, former Laker, won 3 rings as a Showtime Laker, Coach of the Year once upon a time in the NBA, would be a great fit for a team he has coached before. Great fit for LeBron James because LeBron would have to respect those 3 rings and that resume. Byron Scott knows the Lakers inside and out. Byron Scott would command LeBron's respect. Byron Scott would not back down to LeBron James. And because of that, Byron Scott would not last very long as LeBron's coach. The truth is, from what I got from Byron, a little on and a lot off the air, he wants no part of coaching LeBron's Lakers. No part. Because he knows what happens when you coach LeBron James. When LeBron fails, you get fired. As I always say, as I've said many times on this show and on Undisputed, the quote-unquote GOAT needs a scapegoat. LeBron failed miserably last year against the Denver Nuggets in the 4 fourth quarters, 7 of 23 from the field, 1 of 10 from 3. He failed pretty miserably this year against the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Last year, conference finals. This year, first round. I thought he'd be fresh. I thought he'd be right. He missed a potential game winner. Game 2. That after in game 1, disappearing because he quit on his team in the 4th quarter by refusing to participate and to shoot. He basically just checked out on the Lakers, probably because he had been so criticized for failing, epic failing against Denver the year before. Who wants to coach that? Who wants to get fired for that? Darvin Ham got fired for that. The GOAT needs a scapegoat. So I did love Byron's solution, and he said this somewhat sarcastically, but very realistically. He said, you know, LeBron should coach LeBron. Byron Scott suggested something I have brought up before in years past. Why not, LeBron, coach yourself? Why not be the first player coach in many, many years in this league? There were times, way back when we had Bill Russell coaching the Celtics to championships, playing and coaching the Celtics to championships. We had the great Lenny Wilkins playing and coaching. It's possible. LeBron certainly has the highest IQ in basketball. He could pull it off. But would he try? I'd love to see it. But you know and I know what the problem would be. He'd have no more excuse. If LeBron failed as player coach, he couldn't fire himself, could he? No way he would do that. No way he would submit to the pressure of that, the expectation of that, the inexorable end of that, having to fire himself when he, the player, failed. So where does that leave me to answer Theo's question? My druthers? I'll be honest with you. I'm saying this very selfishly. I want to see J.J. Redick coach the Lakers. We all know that J.J. and LeBron have been doing great new podcasts, X's and O's, basketball breakdown at the highest levels, deepest levels. Great stuff. LeBron has been able to look into JJ's mind and see the future. Could JJ have a little Pat Riley in him? He's got the swagger, he's got the look and the looks. He played at a pretty high level. He was a great villain at Duke. He knows what it feels like to be criticized. He can take the heat. He can give as good as he gets. He would be great for me, for us, for Undisputed, for our business, for everybody in this business, because we would all be on the edge of our seats night after night to see how long JJ could last with LeBron. It would be a great experiment. It would be a ratings bonanza, both for the Lakers and for every show that talks about the Lakers. Give me J.J. Redick. Give me Drama King. Give me box office. Give me J.J. Redick, next coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm all eyes. Okay, suffer me this. Allow me a quick blast back into my past, down memory lane, in honor of Dallas versus Oklahoma City in round 2 of these NBA playoffs. I can't believe what I am watching. I did grow up in Oklahoma City with 0 professional basketball. I did move to Dallas in 1978 at age 26 to become the lead columnist of the Dallas Morning News. And at that point, Dallas, Texas had no men's professional basketball. So you have to understand, for me, watching game 1 the other night of Dallas at Oklahoma City was simply surreal. It was weird cool. It gave me goosebumps because I know what both cities used to be before they had basketball. And for me, this matchup was Big D versus Little D, because let's start with Oklahoma City. I've always said it's a wannabe Dallas. It's a little Dallas. It's a we're almost Dallas. I grew up there. It's just 3 hours drive down I-35. Used to, back in the day, it was more like 4 hours before the highways, the interstates, the I-35. Big D is in Dallas, and Little D. My man Keyshawn Johnson said the other day he'd been to the memorial service for our man Chris Mortensen. That was in, I believe, in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And when he got back on Monday, just before the show started, Keyshawn looked across the debate desk at me and said, "How could you have lived in Oklahoma City I was like, well, I didn't really have any choice. You don't get to tell God where to drop you into the world. I didn't choose to be born there, but I was. And I didn't grow up with any money there. I grew up in a little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. And I had to fight my way out, Keyshawn. And when I finally won that full scholarship to Vanderbilt University, I took it and I ran. But I still have deep love for Oklahoma City in my heart because it was a great place to grow up. Maybe in the end it was a great place to escape from, but I still have deep love in my heart for OKC. I grew up there with minor league hockey, the Blazers. We went occasionally just to watch the fights. I knew nothing about hockey. I lived for the one Sunday afternoon a year that the Globetrotters, the Harlem Globetrotters, would visit Oklahoma City, and I'd get somebody to take me all the way downtown to the old Civic Center, the Municipal Auditorium, I think they called it, to watch the Globetrotters play, Meadowlark Lemon. God, those were the Sundays. My friends and I fell in love with a team at Oklahoma City University in 1965 called the Chiefs. They're an NAIA school now, but they had a basketball squad back in the late 60s, coached by the late, great Abe Lemons. What a character he was. Talk about stand-up comedian. He was that as a basketball coach. Sour, dour, sarcastic. As he said of one player who scored 1 point one night, he had one more point than a dead man, said Abe Lemons. My 8th grade basketball team at Taft Junior High fell in love with the Chiefs. After a couple of games, we went to the little lady outside in the little ticket kiosk and we said, hey, is there any way we could buy tickets for the whole year? And she's like, you mean for every game? And yeah, like this is the first concept of season tickets I ever thought about. And she said, I don't know, I could go ask the ticket manager if we could pull all the tickets for the year, but sure, where would you guys want to sit? This is a team that's about to be in the top 10 nationally. And we said, like 50-yard line, front row, like mid-court front row. I worked for a living even in 8th grade. I worked over all the holidays. I worked all summer. This little hole-in-the-wall restaurant my father ran called the Hickory House. I'd saved up my money, and I had just enough to buy my season tickets to the Oklahoma City University Chiefs. Are you believing this? The Chiefs. What a squad they had. My man Gary Gray from Fort Cobb, Oklahoma, Native American, Delaware, tribe. Loved Gary Gray. 6'1" jump shooter. He might launch it as soon as he stepped across half court. That team averaged almost 100 points a game. Jerry Lee Wells, and James Ware, Charlie Big Game Hunter, kids from Kentucky who came to Oklahoma City to play for Abe. They were my NBA team. The great Stu Lance, now TV commentator for the Los Angeles Lakers, was a star for the Nebraska Cornhuskers that year, and they came to little Frederickson Fieldhouse on the campus of Oklahoma City University, where we sat at mid-court front row. They were ranked 9th. This was in December. We beat them that night, Wednesday night. Beat them. And we vaulted into the top 10 nationally, and we made it into the NCAA tournament. I think in those days it had like 8 total teams. I know, this is like Dark Ages stuff, but bear with me. The Chiefs went 24-5, and they drew as their first round opponent in the NCAAs the University of Texas, El Paso. You remember that team? All it did was, as the first all-black starter team, beat an all-white Kentucky team in the national championship game that year. They put the game on live in Oklahoma City. That was a first. This was our brand of pro basketball. Our Chiefs against UTEP. David Lattin, Big Daddy D, David Lattin, and Simi Hill, Ant Hill. I knew from the first dribbles of the game we had no shot. As great as we were up against a pro basketball team from UTEP, and they destroyed us. My Chiefs fell 89-74. It wasn't even close, and UTEP went on to win the national championship. That was as close as I ever got to pro basketball. We did have our pro football team, the Sooners, my Oklahoma Sooners, but pro basketball, that was it. Where did we go on vacation? Every chance we got. We went to Dallas. Little D went to Big D. 3.5 hour drive. Of course, every October, we all went to Dallas for the Red River rivalry game. Little D coming to Big D, Sooners versus Longhorns. Cotton Bowl, 50%. Oklahoma Red, 50%. Texas Orange. Every October. Oklahoma City was Dallas. By the way, Tulsa in the state of Oklahoma is St. Louis. It's more Midwestern. The accent changes only a couple hours to the northeast of Oklahoma City. But Tulsa is St. Louis. Oklahoma City is Dallas. Sooners were our Cowboys. Cowboys, born in 1960, quickly became my pro football team from a distance. Then I went away to Vanderbilt. Then I went to the Miami Herald. Then I went to the LA Times. And when I got a shot at 26 to be the lead columnist of the Dallas Morning News, I jumped. Kid from Little D going to Big D, you better believe it. Pro basketball had already failed in Dallas when I got there in 1978. The Chaparrals, Dallas Chaparrals, they had tried and they had failed miserably in the old ABA. They had moved to San Antonio where they became the Spurs. Houston had pro basketball. San Antonio had an NBA team. But in Dallas, no, it was just a bad idea. What we had at that point when I arrived were the Diamonds, the Dallas Diamonds of the Women's Basketball Association. And I went to a whole bunch of games. I think I went to about every game. Because they had Lady Magic Nancy Lieberman. Could she ever light up a basketball court with her personality and her passing and her scoring? Never seen anything quite like Lady Magic. Caitlin before Caitlin. But pro basketball in Dallas, the NBA coming to Dallas, well, the NBA was down on its luck at that point because that year, 18 of 22 NBA franchises lost money. Ratings had fallen 22%. And somehow, some way, thanks to a man named Norm Sanju, he bought low and then ultimately sold high. But he bought low because nobody really wanted an NBA franchise. And he brought one to Dallas. And I got in on the ground floor. Norm Sanju, Don Carter was the owner, Rick's son, my friend. My age at that point was the very young GM. They immediately drafted Kiki Vandeweghe in the first round. And guess what? He said, I'm not coming. You're going to have to trade me to Denver because I'm not coming. I think he thought it took covered wagons to get to Dallas, Texas. That's what people thought of Dallas at that point. And there were still those out there who thought of Dallas as the city that killed Kennedy. But all of a sudden, Dallas landed Mark Aguirre, and then Rolando Blackman, and then Roy Tarpley. And before you knew it, in 1988, those Dallas Mavericks were in the Western Conference Finals, Game 7 out here in Los Angeles against the Showtime Lakers at the Fabulous Forum. What a game it was. Magic took it over late. said, I know I'm the point guard, but I'm taking 7-foot Roy Tarpley in the fourth quarter, and I will take him out of the game, and he did. And the Lakers prevailed. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma City, I don't know how this happened, but with a whole lot of money and a whole lot of moxie and pulling all the right political strings, Clay Bennett managed to bring the Seattle franchise to Oklahoma City. Are you kidding me? I still don't know how they pulled it off into the third smallest market in the current NBA. And right away, they already had Kevin Durant, they drafted Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And my little bitty Oklahoma City Thunder suddenly had 3 future MVPs on the same roster. That's never happened. It'll never happen again. That team made it to the finals, actually had one big game won, and then got LeBron and de-weighted and boshed by the Heatles 4 straight games. But even as I watched that team, I sat back and thought, I used to be at Frederickson Fieldhouse watching the Oklahoma City University Chiefs, and now my town, Little D, has an NBA team. And now, as we speak, my town and my team are playing the team from Big D, the Mavericks, who were just as lucky to come into existence. What a world we live in. Now, speaking of James Harden, I always tell you, I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. I'm going to give it to you just as straight as I can give it to you, whether it goes down easily or not. I don't care if I burn bridges to athletes because I don't need them to come on this podcast or my show. I don't care. If they want to come, they're welcome. If they don't, they're also welcome. You can trust with me, I have no strings attached. So I'm going to tell you the tough truth about James Harden. He's just a loser. He's just the biggest loser. James Harden is a big game, late game choke artist of the highest order. James Harden has the basketball backbone, the playoff basketball backbone of a jellyfish. Yes, you better believe, as he demonstrated back in 17, 18, 19, and 2020, he's as gifted a perimeter scorer as this game has ever seen, certainly as I've ever seen. Won 3 straight scoring titles, as you well know. Won MVP in 2018, averaging 35-9 scoring title. Next year, another scoring title, 36-7-8, finished second in MVP. Next year, a third straight scoring title. This in 2020, 34-7-8, finished third in MVP. But trust me on this, James Harden is the last guy you want in your basketball foxhole. 3 times, as you well know, James Harden has quit his way out of an NBA city. Out of Houston for Brooklyn, out of Brooklyn for Philly, out of Philly for Los Angeles and the Clippers. In that way, James Harden has become the face of everything that's wrong with today's NBA. Players who just make themselves impossible to root for. If he had redeemed himself in postseason after postseason, I'd shut up. You wouldn't hear a peep from me except how great he was in the clutch. But no. No. It only gets worse and worse and worse in the postseason. I always say on the show, I don't have enough time on live TV to detail James's epic fails in postseasons, but I'm going to hit the lowlights just for you. I'm going to start with 2015, the Western Conference Finals. It was the closeout game at Golden State. I know Golden State was way better than the Houston Rockets, but in that closeout game at Golden State, James Harden went 2 of 11 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3 with 12 turnovers. That's the NBA playoff record single game for turnovers, 12. Let's cherry pick, rotten cherry pick. Let's try 2017. Remember this game at Houston, a closeout game featuring my San Antonio Spurs, except there was no Kawhi, there was no Tony Parker. They were both out. Houston lost that game at home by 39 points. No Kawhi, no Tony Parker, lost by 39. James Harden managed 10 points with 6 turnovers. He went 2 of 11 from the floor and 2 of 9 from 3. Let's try 2018 Conference Finals. It's James and CP3 in Houston, right on schedule, up 3-2. Were those Rockets when Chris Paul pulled his, hamstring. He's done for the conference finals, so it's all about James. It's all on James' shoulders for games 6 and 7. 6 in Houston, 7 at Golden State. And in those 2 games combined, from the three-point line, James Harden went 6 of 25. 6 of 25 from 3, and was a plus-minus of minus 32 in those final 2 games, which, of course, the Rockets lost. Heck, let's go to Brooklyn. Remember the great games played by Kevin Durant, 2021 against the Milwaukee Bucks, the eventual champion Milwaukee Bucks. Kevin Durant was sensational, especially in Game 5 and Game 7 in Brooklyn. But in 6 and 7, when Kevin just needed a little bit of help, James Harden in those 2 games combined went 5 of 18 from the three-point line. A year ago, James Harden, playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, scored 45 in Game 1 at Boston. Game 4 in Philadelphia, he scored 42 points. Whew. That's special. But all of a sudden, James Harden's Sixers were up 3-2 with the Game 6 at home in Philadelphia, and then followed by Game 7 in Boston. And in those 2 games, 6 and 7, James Harden was a disaster. He shot 1 of 11 from 3. He shot 4 of 26 from the floor. Both losses. And then this year, as a Clipper against the Dallas Mavericks, series tied at 2-2 with a Game 5 out here in LA for the Clippers at home at the Crypt. And in those 2 games, James went Game 5, 2 of 12 from the floor and 1 of 7 from 3. That was the do or die, really. That was the turning point game. And in Game 6, the closeout game back in Dallas, James went 5 of 16 and 0 of 6 from 3. So allow me to total up Games 6 and 7 from a year ago and Games 5 and 6 from this year. All crucial, all gotta win, all must-dos for James Harden. That's 4 games worth of crucial from James Harden. You ready for this? A grand total of from the floor, from 3. Let's start with from 3. 2 of 24 from 3. That's 8%. 4 big games, 2 of them at home, a Game 6 and a Game 5 at home, turning point games, 1 a closeout. 2 of 24 from 3 by James Harden. And overall from the floor, 14 of 65. So he shot 8% from 3, 2 of 24, and 22% from the floor, 14 of 65. Those are impossibly bad, impossibly wrong numbers. I don't know. James Harden, in the end, I just wonder, what are the Clippers thinking? They actually want to run it back with James Harden as their orchestrator, their point guard, their leader. They want to run it back with James next year. I got to tell you, I would be running from James Harden. This is Chase from Indianapolis. Will Dak Prescott be a Cowboy in the 2025 season, so a year from next season, 2025 season? I wrestled with this. I actually slept on this question for a night. I wanted to answer in the affirmative, as in, no, he will not be, but I can't. I know what you're trying to do, Chase. You're just trying to poke my bear, trying to send me over the edge with this question, make me crazy with this question, and you succeeded, because it does make me crazier than I even am. I do believe in the end, Jerry will crumble, Dak will be a Cowboy 2025 and 6 and 7. I do not believe Jerry will force Dak this coming year to play out his deal and to eat his deal and the $60 million cap hit required if Dak melts down again in the playoffs. I don't believe Jerry will give him any sort of Super Bowl ultimatum, Super Bowl or bust. You know, I'm reading some Stephen Jones remarks the other day, and it horrified me because it now feels like that my last hope, Stephen, I used to know very well, had a lot of respect for him. He's sort of the un-Jerry, like father, not like son. But now it feels like Stephen is turning into Jerry. It happens. Now he's at least as delusional, if not more so, than Jerry. Stephen was asked on Adam Shine's radio show, can you win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as your quarterback? And Stephen said, absolutely, and then began to rave about what a great leader Dak Prescott is, how he's leading the team through the offseason, getting everybody prepared to win next year's Super Bowl through the offseason. And Stephen ended with the line, but you know, that old oblong ball doesn't always bounce your way. And I'm thinking, Stephen, are you suggesting that we lost that playoff game to Green Bay because the ball didn't bounce our way? We were down 27-0 late in the first half against the NFL's youngest team, a 7 seed to our 2 seed. We were at home with Detroit lined up to come back to Dallas so that we could beat them a second time and go back to San Francisco. And third time was going to be the charm as we would right the wrong of the 49ers eliminating us from the playoffs the last 2 seasons. It was all set up, and we were down 27-0 before halftime. We were down 48-16 early in the fourth quarter, and you're telling me it's because that old oblong ball just didn't bounce the right way for us? Baloney, Stephen. You're more delusional than your father. And Chase, you got me. Dak Prescott will forever be my Dallas Cowboy quarterback. This is Lance from Bellflower, California. Have you ever grown out your beard? I've gotten this question several times, never answered it. Lance, I'll be honest, I never have. I've never even tried to grow out my beard. I've never had a mustache. Never had any facial hair of any kind. I don't have one single little even hidden tattoo. And I'll be the first to admit I'm a weirdo. I'm a wackadoodle. I do believe, have always believed in body as temple. God gives you just one. I try to honor it. I try to condition it, maybe to a fault. I try to fuel it properly. No drugs, no alcohol, no altered states for me. I just keep it 1,000% real. No mustache, no beard, no camouflage. I know, I'm just a complete nut. But that's me, and I do like me. Which brings me to the final question of the day from Marcus from Detroit. What is the most frivolous purchase you've ever made? That's a good question. There are two of those. The last 2 summers, Marcus, with my wife's blessing, I have flown private jets. I have paid for private jets when I go back to visit my childhood friends in my hometown of Oklahoma City. My wife Ernestine says, you've earned it, spend it. You can't take it with you. Look, I have been blessed. I have made good money. I have saved a good bit of my money. But please understand, for a good 30 years of my career, mostly as a sports columnist, I put in as many frequent flyer miles as anybody on this planet. Trust me. I lived in airports and on airplanes. I lived with late flights and canceled flights and germ-infested flights. So many sinus infections and thises and that's and sickness and flying and flying and flying. I went every year for 30 years to every Super Bowl and every World Series and every Final Four and every Masters and every U.S. Open golf and U.S. Open tennis and every PGA golf and every British Open golf and Wimbledon and spring training and training camp and every NFL playoff game and every NBA playoff game. I wore out flying. It was great, but it was grueling. I just got tired of flying. I can't tell you what a relief it has been, how worth it it has been to fly private. Look, Ernestine and I live with our daughter, quote unquote, our Maltese Hazel. We live in a really nice place out here on the west side of Los Angeles, but it's not the place. We've thought about buying the place, but it starts at, even for, this is just sort of an average the place out here, you got to start at 10 million. Trust me, 10 million. I know you say, my God, but that's what we said. Could I figure out how to, yeah, I could probably figure that out, how to buy a $10 million house. But we haven't done that. And I've told you, I've got a 2019 ZR1 that I had specially made just for me, the Corvette factory in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I love that car. I barely got over 10,000 miles on that car, and I have no plans to give it up. I paid, I don't know, 150 grand for it, so it wasn't that expensive, but it is precious to me, and I still love driving that car. Stick shift, 755 horse. It works for me. In 2018, I bought Ernestine a Bentley. I think it was around 400 grand, and it's been worth every penny. Low mileage, great car, no problems. No plans to buy a new one, so we're set there too. So when it comes to my little summer vacation back to my hometown of Oklahoma City, it has meant something to me to fly private. I'd rather not say what the price tag is, but it's a lot. And I've done it twice, and I have not regretted it. No buyer's remorse for me. I didn't grow up with money in Oklahoma City. I worked hard for the money I had before I went away to Vanderbilt on full scholarship. I'm completely self-made. I didn't inherit a penny from either of my parents. We were lucky to make it as long as they did. But it just matters to me to land back in Oklahoma City at Will Rogers World Airport and taxi to that private facility on my private flight, and to think I earned this. That's it for episode 112. Thank you for listening and or watching. Thanks to Jonathan Berger and his All-Pro team for making this show go. Thanks to Tyler Korn for producing. Please remember, Undisputed every weekday, 9:30 to noon Eastern. The Skip Bayless Show every week.